Budget Day, and in a matter of hours, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt is set to deliver what could be the Conservative Party's last budget before the next general election.
Well, to tell us more about what we can expect from today is former Treasury official James Dowling and Professor of Economics Joe Michelle. James.
Morning.
Good morning.
This stimulates you, this stuff. We need to sell it to people.
I love a budget day, I have to say. I mean, I feel nostalgic about kind of playing budget bingo in the Treasury and kind of wondering which of your hits end up in the speech. But I mean, this is an event where he is paying for a single relatively large tax rise on the back of an increasing tax burden, ever-increasing tax burden fueled by inflation, and a significant amount of further austerity built on what we already saw at the autumn statement after the election, which whoever is in charge then, I wonder, is going to have to pick up the pieces on.
For men and women up and down this country, maybe going to work right now, just back from the school run, I always want to make it specific to them. What does this mean? I mean, 2% national insurance cut, a few quid in your pocket, they say 900 quid, nothing that you're going to notice too quickly, right?
Well, I mean, you will see it in your pay packet immediately, assuming you're employed. Well, we understand immediately because they're bringing forward a bill to legislate it next week. So, assuming that happens, yes, I imagine it will go into people's pay packets pretty quickly. So that's on the kind of positive ledger, if you like. On the other hand, 4% inflation. People are being dragged further and further into higher rate tax. The autumn statement last autumn essentially brought forward a 20% up to a 20% cut in spending on public services for anything except the NHS and some other core departments. Doesn't sound like he's got the money to pay for this and inevitably a fuel duty freeze. There's no way they're going to do that before the election for the budget. So presumably he's going to double down on that and pencil in further cuts essentially for after the election, and then challenge Labour to make up the difference.
Well, I'm just going to bring in Joe Michelle, who we've got down the line. Now, obviously, this is a budget in the lead up to a general election. Lots of accusations of, the Chancellor just politicking or playing politics. But from a kind of neutral standpoint, do you think that the predictions that have been made this morning make fiscal sense for the government? Or is it simply about, as I've said, playing politics?
There are very few economists who tell you that this story adds up. As the other commentator has said, this whole thing is based on projections for continued austerity, by some measures worse or stronger austerity than the austerity we've seen since 2010. 20% cuts to a whole range of government, local government, a whole bunch of other areas of spending, which is already at the bone. The idea that 20% more can be found in cuts because of so-called efficiency savings and so on is completely implausible. So nobody believes that these cuts, which have been penciled in for 5 years in the future in order to hit this sort of largely fictional fiscal rule, can be made. And so nobody believes really that these tax cuts are in any way sustainable. So I think many people regard this as two main things going on. One is an attempt to have a little sort of sugar rush boom into the election, get a little bit of extra money into people's pockets, a bit of extra spending, and that might show up in a little uptick in growth, allowing them to say, well, there's a good news story. But it will be a short-run sugar rush kind of boom. It's not sustainable. The other possibility is that this is setting a trap for the Labour Party, as was also suggested. This could be a way of setting up something which is quite difficult to reverse, because who likes to come into government and immediately put taxes up? But given that it is unsustainable, I think there's no way around it. It will have to be reversed, or other tax rises will have to be found at some point.
Joe, you started your bit there, and you're both economists. You know and understand. I don't pretend to. But what I want to try and explain as best I can is, it's all well and good to say, and I'm not even talking politics here, we have public services that are in the toilet. We have the highest taxation in 70 years. We have an incumbent government who, I guess, justifiably will talk about the pandemic. They'll talk about the Ukraine war. Is Sunak a victim of being not good enough, or is he a victim of circumstance? Yesterday we were told sort of 50-50. What would all you economists, who seem to quite rightly criticise what's going on, what would you do? Because there doesn't seem to me, whatever your party, there doesn't seem to be any wriggle room. I mean, just come out and say that. Be honest to the British people. Do you not agree?
I agree. I don't know which of us you want to go first.
I'll start with you, Joe.
Yeah, sure. No, I do agree. And I think some honesty would be very useful at this point, to say there is very little wriggle room. The debt is high. I do think we could afford to borrow more for investment, to get the good jobs we need for the future, to get energy security, to get the green transition underway. But it should be borrowing for investment, for things that will pay back over time and will generate growth. That's what a business does. It borrows to invest. I think we can do it. For current spending, for day-to-day spending, we have a challenging situation. There's no way around it. The austerity of the last 15 years has ground schools, hospitals, transport, infrastructure, energy, you name it, into a very severely degraded state. And that does need to be fixed if we want functioning public services, if we want our children to go to schools where the roof stays up above their heads and doesn't fall in on them. And we don't see the kinds of stories that we're seeing daily about emergencies in the health service. And we have an aging population. We do have the legacy of weak growth, which I think is the result of economic mismanagement, which makes all of this harder. So I do think time for some hard truths, that those on upper incomes, those who receive income in the form of dividends, income in the form of bond income and so on, wealth income, should be paying the same as people who are paying wage income. At the moment, they pay less tax in the pound than people, normal working people on their wages. There are a whole range of things like this that can be done. I think further windfall taxes on the energy companies that have done so well over the recent period. Alignment of pension relief, for example, for upper income earners with those on lower incomes. Again, just making it fair so that everybody pays.
Let's cut to the chase, sir. You're saying that everybody in the higher tax bracket should pay more money. Can I bring that to James? Is that the answer?
Well, taxes are going to have to go up under whoever is Chancellor, Prime Minister after the election. That is the reality of the kind of fiscal scorched earth position.
As Joe said,
they're
he only wants it to be at one aim, though.
I think
that's where the money is.
I mean, yeah, indeed. The question you put, what would we do and what would I do instead? Well, glib answer, I wouldn't start from here. But given they put Liz Truss in charge and tanked their poll ratings, I think the risk that they're running, and if I were Rachel Reeves, I would capitalise on this, is they just look like they're politicking at the expense of the rest of us, and that will actually damage them at the ballot box.
Do you think there's a fundamental, just really quickly, fundamental issue in the way that we do budgets, as it were, every 6 months, spring, autumn, that everything is kind of saved for this moment, and it's very much more geared towards getting the headlines rather than doing what's responsible?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I mean, the fact that we have 2 of these events every year creates its own momentum actually to produce more and more things that you spend money on. I think, that is disruptive, and it's not the way things are done elsewhere.
James and Joe, thank you very, very much indeed. Really appreciate your involvement this morning.